Greetings and welcome to Cassirer, the Human as Animal Symbolicum, the symbolic approach to philosophy. So, this is taken from some writings from Ernst Cassirer, a 20th century philosopher, uh, so to speak, neo Kantian, except for the fact that a lot of people at a particular Davos conference didn't seem to like his way of not going along with the pack of philosophers at the time. So he's kind of been marginalized in a lot of philosophical schools. Therefore, being that he is the version of philosophy that I mostly subscribe to, the synthetic abstractionist, I'd say that his less of being a philosopher than bringing forth more an approach to philosophy, which is the symbolic approach. And that's his words. But that said, let's get started. If you just arrived, please hit the like. We're going to keep this one really short because it's really about having a foundation of some of these philosophical approaches that will apply to interpreting law along with the logic we've been learning. Let's proceed. So, the human symbolic, or you could say in Latin, the Homo symbolicum, and the animal symbolicum. Man cannot but symbol, and symbol here is a verb. The human being is fundamentally a symbolic creature. It's a different dimension that we exist in. Humans live in a different dimension to animal life, and it's transcending the here and now through the power of language. Humans transcend immediate sense impressions. So, the symbolic dimension that's being mentioned here, it's transcending our immediate reality. Humans are not bound to the here and now. Through language, they transcend the given immediate sense impressions. It requires some breaking free of the physical immediate world. The mythical thought cannot transcend the immediate reality. So there has to be a breaking free of the immediate reality for the mythical thought. But since it can't have any kind of real effect on the immediate reality, it goes through an evolution of language. They're gradually liberating through word, forming sentences of complete thoughts into symbolic meaning. So let's look at this a little bit deeper. We're going to break these down so it's easily understood. Come on, there we go. So let's first look at our language functions. Here we have two fundamental functions. Stick with me on this. This will actually be pretty easy, even though the words are kind of strange. So language serves both representational and performative functions. So we have these two different functions here, the constatives, or constatives, so things that are constant, representational function. It distinguishes between the objects of our senses and the meaning of the object. It describes the world. This is the ontological. This is the way of saying a cat's a cat, and everyone has a pretty much constant understanding of that. Then we have the performatives. This is the action field. This is where we're bringing thought into action. So with performatives, this is the second fundamental function of language. It extends linguistic concepts to the field of action. It changes the world through speech. This is the
performance. 2001 says, Oakland love.
Greetings, less TV. Definitely less TV and more philosophy. Let's continue here. So as we see here, we have the representational function of language, attributing meaning to objects, and a performative, which is action, getting things done through language. Words through changes the world through speech, the world through words. The critical insight here is before we can use the performatives to change the world through our speech, we must overcome mythical thought and fully develop the symbolic function, which brings us back to this one here, where that liberation, we have to break free from the mythical thought here because it cannot transcend the immediate reality. We need that performative aspect of language. So it needs to evolve from the word to sentence to the symbolic meaning. All right, so I hope that makes sense. That's our critical insight. Two fundamental functions of language, the constitutives, which is representational, and the performatives, which are action. So attributing meaning to objects, and of course prescribing duties or functions and actions. Then we have language and the future. And here's brings us into the recent discussions into contracts and contract law, the promise, symbolic thought in action. Through symbolic language, humans direct speech toward the future, creating the promise. So this has formative power. The linguistic sign shapes the objective world, committing internally to a self-created world. And this is something that's uniquely human. So you see the dogs aren't going to sign the contract or exchange money for goods because promising is a symbolic activity unavailable to non-symbolic life. The promise, it's a speech act that transcends the present, binding the self to the future action and creating a world of meaning. Wow, so the promises create the world of meaning, and the action is binding the self to future action. So, what an evolution of language to get to the promise, symbolic thought in action and into the future, which then takes us to moral personality, the constitutive element, the basic direction toward the future, made possible through symbolic thought, is constitutive. There's a couple ways of saying this: is constitutive or constitutive, but I think constitutive is easier to say. But the other version rolls off the tongue and it sounds a little bit more erudite, but I digress. So, the basic direction toward the future, made possible through symbolic thought, is constitutive for the moral personality. So, it makes up the moral personality, the direction toward the future. So, what direction? That's that unity, the coherence of self across time and actions. So, that also is a level of low entropy. Is there a predictability and regularity and coherence of self across time and actions? Then there's the completeness, the integration of all aspects of personality. This is what separates us from the so-called artificial intelligence and any kind of algorithm. I think that was Gödel that stated that it was inherently incomplete, and any axiom would need to be effective would need those exceptions. So the completeness is the integration of all aspects of personality. And of course, you said there, the inner consistency, the alignment between words, promises, and deeds, and of course, across time. So what makes us human? Symbolic thought, the foundation of humanity. Through symbolic thought, humans transcend immediate reality and become uniquely human. We can transcend reality. Humans are not bound to the here and now, but transcend through the power of language. We can make promises, direct speech toward the future, creating binding commitments to self-created worlds. In the moral personality, develop unity, completeness, and inner consistency through symbolic action. Wow, so the symbolic actions are what actually build the moral personality. The animal symbolicum. Humans are fundamentally symbolic beings, and this symbolic function is what enables morality, culture, and the very essence of what it means to be human. All right, and now to the next slide here. We get to the Human Rights Foundation. No, we're not taking donations for the Human Rights Foundation, if there even is one, but we're talking about the foundation of human rights. Symbolic nature as a foundation. Cassirer's attempt of symbolic being provides a renewed philosophical and anthropological foundation to human dignity and human rights. There's a scientific support to what he's doing here. There's foundation supported by the latest scientific developments in the study of man and escaping critiques. It transcends both external and internal critiques of human rights universality. So it's a good foundation when we look at the concept of the symbolic being, when we start to apply it in scientific developments and any kind of critiques of human rights. So the symbolic approach provides a robust foundation for human dignity that withstands philosophical challenges while grounding rights in the essential nature of humanity. So we can get in a little bit more of how that works. So we have the symbolic life world versus the vitale Lebensraum. So there's two dimensions of human existence. Unlike other animals, humans inhabit not only physical space, but also a symbolic life world. And this is kind of coined by Cassirer here, the vitale Lebensraum. Terrible with Latin, but that's the physical habitat shared with all animals. So this is basically the physical world, the caves, the trees, everything that we share with the animals. Then there's a symbolic life world. This is the uniquely human dimension of meaning and culture. With the human condition, we simultaneously live in a physical reality and a symbolic reality, inhabiting spaces of meaning that transcend the immediate environment. And we see this everywhere as we create our own physical and symbolic world side by side. All right, then we have reason versus symbolic being. So beyond reason alone, the ratio is between reasoning and instinct here is not the distinguishing factor of man. The symbolic nature transcends reason as the defining human characteristic. So reason alone is not the distinguishing factor because animals too display intelligence and rationality. So some more than others, that ratio doesn't really matter. It's beyond the capabilities because reason does not exhaust human potential to intelligently cope with the environment. So, animal symbolicum. Man is a foremost symbolic being. The symbolic function, rather than reason alone, constitutes the fundamental essence of humanity. So, as you see here, and some animals actually probably reason better than humans. Nevertheless, they can't exist in the symbolic world. Then we get the third link here, the symbolic system. So this is what separates us from the other animals. Between the receptor and effector systems found in all animal species, humans possess a third link, the symbolic system. So as we see here in this chain, we have the receptors, these are our five senses, into the symbolic realm where they're interpreted. And then we decide how we affect the environment with our muscles, our motions, our language. This transforms life. The acquisition of this symbolic section here, this acquisition transforms the whole of human life. And it actually creates a new dimension that we live in. Humans live in a new dimension of reality, which is broader than the animals. So let's listen to this quote from Ernst Cassirer himself. Man has, as it were, discovered a new method of adapting himself to his environment. Between the receptor system and the effector system, which are to be found in all animal species, we find in man a third link, which we may describe as the symbolic system. This new acquisition transforms the whole of human life, as compared with the other animals. Man lives not merely in a broader reality. He lives, so to speak, in a new dimension of reality. So this symbolic system isn't something that just expands the reality. It's a whole new dimension. And it's a new adaptation method. The symbolic system provides a revolutionary way to interact with the environment. So this is something where, as you can see, it's the adaptation can only work once we've gone past the mythical thinking, where we can actually have that type of effective thinking of symbols that will have a basis into reality and actually make changes into the world. So this is the new adaptation, is actually to be able to make changes instead of just passively adapt through language. And that's, of course, through some of these other elements we went over here. Let me get back here to this slide here. Not that one, it was this one. Maybe it was this one. All right, it was this one. One more back. So yeah, we had the all right, performatives. There we go. So we have constitutives and performatives. But the critical insight is that we can only use performatives once we overcome the mythical thought, because, as we saw here, the mythical thought can't transcend the immediate reality. We need that evolution where the actual symbols start to have meaning in the real world, where we can start to make change. We can change the world through the speech with performatives, but we can't use performatives once we overcome mythical thought. Key part there, I just want to make sure we get that clear. All right, so that's the new adaptation method. The symbolic system provides a revolutionary way to interact with the environment, creating through symbols. Humans shape and modify environment through symbolic means. This is transcending constraints. Symbolic capacity overcomes immediate physical limitations. Think about this. Every machine, every invention overcomes immediate physical limitations. Key insight is that symbolic adaptation enables humans to create culture and meaning beyond biological necessity, beyond our needs. Incredible. So, this takes us to the artificial medium now. And another quote from Ernst Cassirer. Instead of dealing with the feelings themselves, man is, in a sense, constantly conversing with himself. He has so enveloped himself in linguistic forms, in artistic images, in mythical symbols, or religious rites, that he cannot see or know anything except by this artificial medium. So man cannot confront reality. No longer can man confront reality immediately or see it face to face. Reality then recedes. Physical reality seems to recede as man's symbolic activity advances. The symbolic medium is linguistic forms, artistic images, and mythical symbols, and religious rites. They now structure all human experience and knowledge. And with that, it takes us to the end of the presentation on Cassirer. Human is the animal symbolicum and his symbolic approach to philosophy. A much overlooked philosopher of the 20th century, some described as a neo-Kantian, but I think he's more of his own breed here with a more of an approach to philosophy. And if to be called a particular school of philosophy, I'd say definitely in the synthetic abstractionalist vein for sure, because of the way he's taken this type of approach. That said, I thank you all for being here. I hope you enjoyed this presentation here and learned about a great philosopher that's usually been overlooked but has some pretty good writings and a lot that do apply to law in its symbolic form. And as you see here, the intersection of a lot of the topics we've covered here and what he has described within his philosophy of the animal symbolicum. With that, I thank you all, and I hope to see you all on the next one. Peace out.
Bill Thimmeth 4426 says, take care all.